many years, who I'm sure is going to bring to us her insights from her struggles and her work in India. That phrase she used in her beginning when she introduced a seminar on justice for all, I think has always been dear to Devaki's heart, and I think we shall be hearing from her on that. And so we'll have Devaki, and then we will have some discussion of her presentation. Then we'll have Zelda, who tells me she's working on supporting parents to enable them to achieve the full development of their children's potential. And obviously, if that's not done at the beginning of people's lives, they're going to be stunted for the rest of their lives. And many of us see troubling impacts on child development. UNICEF has done some very good work recently on the going back in what we thought we'd achieved in terms of children's well-being. So I think we're looking forward to that as well. So let me first give the floor to the person who's had the inspiration and vision for this seminar to tell us about their thoughts on the pursuit of gender equality.
So as you can see, I'm just crashing into the concept that was put for the seminar, gender inequalities, and I apologize for that. But as we've all talked about this, I've been on this journey for so long and found it quite frustrating. So that's why I decided to call the paper, Has It Been Blinding? Blinding means that the women's movement and UN and all of us working on gender inequality, how to redo it, how to get it right, it has sort of perhaps sapped our energy and distracted us from doing something a little more what I think purposeful at this stage at least in India's life, but I hope it's about everybody else. So I'm going to read my paper, and the slides are a few just to dramatize what I want to say. So I argue that gender inequalities, unearthing them, tracing their roots, as well as proposing remedies, has been a strong presence on an important theme for feminists. Not only in economics, but also law and other subjects, and for global organizations like the UN, the World Bank, and governments. Feminist lawyers have also addressed the neglect of women and their economic work. So the quest for justice for women, and I'm sort of shifting it from inequality to justice, the understanding of their neglect is a broad-based program adopted by all actors, feminists from all disciplines, governments, and the UN. But while this quest focused on the idea of gender equality, advocacy, which includes all of us feminists, women's movement, officials, lost out an opportunity provided by the resurgence of the women's movement to build a more just world. So I feel that the women's movement is one of the interesting forces that have come out in the world, and therefore somehow gender equality need not be the only goal. Many scholars have redirected the idea of gender equality, broadened the scope of inequalities, bringing other dimensions such as stratification. We saw that some of it today. Stephanie Seguino has done some very good work on that. Human rights, Diane Elson and Radhika Balakrishnan have sort of gone into gender and human rights. And Andrea Cornwall sees this quest, gender equality, or fighting against gender inequality, from the broad-based quest for equity and justice. And that's where I feel an identity. In some sense, while this measure was useful as an exposure to the injustice and inclusion that genders other than males have experienced, the overarching pressure dominated the work of many agencies, including governments, and made the goal one of catching up with men, making sure that as many women are educated as men. In this paper, I wish to draw attention to another area of gross inequality, one that urgently demands moral sensibilities, namely the size, the condition, and the wretchedness of the poor in India. Locating this data and analysis in India provides a sharper argument for this diversion. Now I must learn how to do this. I got it right. I want to put up a slide on this. Okay. Indian poverty, the nature and the way poverty is experienced by Indian men, women and children is actually an unbearable sight. People worldwide have seen unbearable pictures of destitution in Africa and of course in many refugee camps. But I suggest that the experience of being poor in India, not just poor but desperately or extremely poor in India, is unsurpassed. Dealing with this phenomena, particularly in India, I propose requires moral sensibilities, and that's my main thesis today, is that there should be a moral sensibility to justice. Not only economic approaches to what is called alleviating poverty. I refer to Gandhi's life story as an illustration of how an objective, such as enabling the poor to move out of poverty, is underpinned by a moral imperative, including a sense of what is justice. Hence, I suggest that engaging with inequalities, gender and otherwise, needs tethering in morals and location in the area of justice. As I said earlier, one of the most shocking, troubling experiences of living in India is the confrontation with the poor. The poor in India, as I already said, is many and living in such dreadful conditions of filth, disease, starving, and they are in the millions. So let me see, look at these. These are people living just outside Delhi, and we are eating rotis, that is chapatis, made of grass and vegetable made of wheat. And we are actually seeing millions of these people, and we are now looking at other issues, whereas we should confront poverty. The last slide, please. The one with the, yeah. This is a famous cartoonist called R.K. Lakshman, whom some of you have heard. And he's got this satirical cartoon where the little beggar's child, is looking at the computer and saying, can we order some meals? Because India was going high-tech, and so it looks like you just have to press the button and you can get your food. But that's just irony. The confrontation with the poor is what drives me to the argument that this is not the scene for fighting for gender equality, but to change the political philosophy and moral principles of the overall economic program. Some excruciating data from India collected by Thomas Piketty, and you all know about Thomas Piketty, I'm sure, focuses on wealth and income inequality in India and how it has moved in the last 2 decades. He reviews Indian data over the decades, taking note of all our recent data. And for those of you who are economists, he has used household survey of consumption, fiscal and national accounts, newly raised tax data, as well as UN statistics, human development survey. He's really done an excellent job. And he has done now you will see in these slides that, can we have this slide? Yeah. Okay. I don't know, maybe. Yeah, let's go to the other. This is as many poor are there at the moment. This is just showing you the profile of the number of poor in India. But what I want to show are the slides which show Thomas Piketty's data. Yeah, this is one. Between 80 and 24, the share of the top 1% of India's population income increased from 6% to 20%. That is between 1980, when reform started, liberalization, to today. The share of the top 1% of India's population in income increased from 6% to 22%. During what happened then? During the same period, the share of the top 20% also increased. The middle fell from 36 to 30, and the share of the bottom 50% fell from 24 to 15. So we know this is happening, I believe, in England, everywhere else, that the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. But in India, that is excruciating. The period after 2000 saw the highest growth of the economy compared to the 5 preceding decades. In other words, the period 80-2004 saw the top 1% grew at 550 times the rate of the bottom 50%. There's another report the government has given saying that this is not true at all. But so then we go back to before reform came in, that is before we liberalized, that is before 1980. The top 1% captured less than 21, and over the 51-81 period, that is post-independence, 50% group captured 28% of total growth. And incomes of this group, that is the poorer, grew faster than the average, when the top 1% people decreased. So what we are arguing is that after liberalization came, the whole situation of inequality changed, but the change was just like an attack, like a holocaust on the poor. That is the 1% and the 50%, which you read, I'm sure, with Piketty. Now, why I brought this poverty situation here is that it shows how insensitive we are. I mean, there's a moral imperative here that you're living with this kind of inequality growing in kind of slicing of the GDP cake only for the few while the others are living in that wretched state. So I argue therefore that we Indians are letting it happen leads me to the argument that there's a lack of morality. That we in India have ceased to have any sense of shame or guilt that we are driving the poor into further poverty. It should be really intolerable. And I argue that one person, Gandhi, he found it intolerable, the living condition of the poor, which he witnessed when he returned to India from South Africa. So then Gandhi tried to recruit India in a program to banish this blot through appealing to morals. And Paul laughed at me when I said I want to talk about morals in economics, that it will be so different from what all of you are talking about. But I do want to argue that there is a case for an ethical perspective into economic policy. So Gandhi tried to recruit India in a program to banish this blot through appealing to morals. Think of the other, which provided the basis of the economic programs he tried to put on the ground. He called it working for the second freedom.